So I've just come back from my trip to the US. Although that's not strictly true. I've been back about 4 days, but my jet lag has been so bad that it feels as though I've only just arrived back into um, reality. Um, I was gone for 10 days. First 5 days I was had a horrible cold and I was in three time zones and working, and so I was kind of out of it, and it was only recovery with my friends in Portland that saved me from fading away, I think. Um, but yes, I didn't get quite as much reading done, which I'll report on in a later video. Um, but here I'm going to talk about my small US trip book haul. Um, I bought all my books from Powell's in Portland, which I believe is one of, if not the biggest bookstore in the world. It's a whole city block. Um, it's enormous. And it carries both new books and secondhand books in the shelves side by side, which is really useful because if you're looking for a book or you're looking for an author, sometimes you might find stuff that's out of print, or you might find more interesting editions from the secondhand. So I essentially I bought secondhand books and new books. I only bought five. I could have bought many more, but I was travelling light, so I didn't have much room in my bookcases. I took five books with me. Okay, so what did I buy? I bought this. It's called Genoa, A Telling of Wonders by Paul Metcalf. This was recommended to me by Valerie, who I was staying with in Portland. And it's an interesting book. I don't know much about it, but essentially, Paul Metcalf is the great grandson of Herman Melville, the great mid 19th century American writer. And this is apparently a purging of the burden of his relationship with his great grandfather Herman Melville in his signature polyphonic style. The life of Melville, Melville's use and conversion of the Columbus myth, and the story of the Mills brothers. One an MD who refuses to practice, the other an executed murderer, vibrate and sing a quintessential American song. Even that doesn't really tell you what it's about, so I'm really looking forward to this. It's published by Coffee House Press, and it looks fantastic. So that Genoa by Paul Metcalf. Then also recommended by Brian, one of my Portland's friends, Sometimes a Great Notion by Ken Kesey. Ken Kesey is obviously most famous for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is his second novel. I think apparently his novels went somewhat downhill after this, but apparently this is a wonderful novel and one of Brian's favourites. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's set in Portland, the northwest of the US. Then we have my first second-hand book, which is The Hunters by James Salter, a hardback by Counterpoint. If you know anything about me, you know that James Salter may be my favourite prose writer of all time. This was his first novel. He left the American Air Force to write it, and it is an extraordinary tale about pilots in the Korean War. It's not a war book at all, although it's based almost entirely in the war. It is a novel about flying and the personalities of flyers, but also about the kind of subtle sensations of being kind of exceptional because you're flying these extraordinary jets. But it is most importantly a poetically extraordinary evocation of a man's inner world as he wrestles with himself to be the best. Then I have here Robert Hass, The Apple Trees of Alema. Robert Hass is a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, and he was on the National Book Award. I'm currently halfway through or further a book of his essays called What Light Can Do, which is a extraordinarily varied set of writings about poets, photographers, novelists, and talks often about some of my favourite writers, Wallace Stevens and Chekhov. But I've actually not read his poetry, so I bought this, which is a second-hand copy. So this was like about £4. This is his selected writings, and I look forward to reading them. And then finally, The Givenness of Things, essays by Marilynne Robinson. And if you know me at all, you'll know that I think Marilynne Robinson is the greatest living writer on the planet, certainly in America. Her 3 novels, Gilead, Home and Leela, are the most magnificent trilogy written. And I've read them more than once, and I've read all of her essays. In fact, apart from one book, which I still need to get, I've probably read every published word by Marilynne Robinson. And this is The Givenness of Things. I mean, you know, for those who know, she is a deeply religious person, but her religious thinking is incredibly considered and insightful, and in no way didactic or dogmatic. She's not interested in conversion at all. She's just interested in thinking about what it is to be human, and a response to the, you know, the transcendental, the spiritual. So anyway, 5 books. I've still got more on my reading list, so I shall set about reading them, and I'm going to report back on Pride and Prejudice, which I read on the trip there, and The Quiddity of Will Self, which I read on my trip back. 2 extraordinarily unusual, different books. I mean, they couldn't be more different. But yeah, both very interesting, and I will do that later today. Thank you.